The Department of Transportation held public roadshow hearings today in Monroe and Winnsboro. Good evening to you. I'm Jennifer Andrews. Jasmine Bingham was there and heard concerns from local officials. Jasmine?
That's right, Jennifer. Local officials from both Franklin and Ouachita Parish, Columbia, and the city of Monroe shared their concerns about projects and how they could impact residents.
Top of the bridge. The second thing is that it was slated for a 2023-24 budget.
DOTD representatives, local officials, and community members discussed construction projects for the preliminary year of 2025 to 2026. During the hearing, they reviewed the Highway Priority Program and how projects are prioritized. The mayor of Columbia, Hannah Springer, requested more red lights and changes to a town limit sign, while City of Monroe Council member Rodney McFarland requested repairs for the Texas Avenue Bridge.
Legislators and members of DOTD as well, because this is where we have input come in and we take that input into consideration and we use that when we're planning projects and looking at how to prioritize projects.
Monroe City Council member Rodney McFarland says the deck of the bridge needs repairs, and without it, it could be a slippery slope for drivers. DOTD says there's a $19 billion backlog for projects, but their budget for this year is $1.2 billion.
From the gas tax funds the TTF and all of the projects most of the projects that DOTD delivers. And so, that tax has been stagnant since about 1990. And so, currently they're working on getting a special tax session.
DOTD says they're working on assessing needs for projects as soon as possible. Back to you.